Um, I can also start because I guess that also means you all don't want know me. So, hi everyone. I'm Victoria. I'm a 6'2" projector on the cross of limitation. So my birthday was just a couple days ago. Um, I know Jonah through, I showed up at the conference not this year, but last year, and through his YouTube videos and just time in Santa Fe. And I'll get into what the sort of topic of today is a little bit more, but as you probably read in the Discord, the question, well, first of all, I wanted to have a space where we could just discuss a little more openly because I think everybody's just got such a unique perspective and projector that I am. I'm like, who are these people? Like, I want to know what's up with you. So I have like some short thoughts that I can start off on about this question of healing and the not self, because it was also coming up at the conference. And I'll get into maybe a little bit of context about my own healing journey as well later. But that's a little bit about me. And Sirak, do you want to go next?
Sure. I'm Sarak. I'm a 2-4 pure generator. I could go in and talk about all the centers I have defined and undefined, but I don't think that's really too relevant. I'm on the cross of service, the cross of service two. What else? So I found out about Signpost through Jonah's YouTube channel as well. I got a bit obsessed and just started like listening to a bunch of like a bunch of videos. Um, I'm adopted, and like that's had a pretty big sort of impact on my awareness. And then my awareness before human design, and then finding out about human design, like a lot has really shifted for my brain. It's actually really fascinating for me. Defined
Yeah.
head and heart. So like yeah, it's very
Yeah.
fascinating.
Which channel or channels?
124 to 1760 62. So it goes to the throat.
Amazing. Thanks, Sirak.
Thank you.
Christine? Also, you can say pass or just if you can't unmute, that's totally fine.
Oh, no, it's fine. I was trying to grab my headset. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you good.
Hi, my name is Christine. I'm the Wake Up Fairy. I have the same cross as Ra, so our birthdays are technically a day apart.
Area, yeah.
So I don't know what, what you want to know. The dog's head's in the way. Um, yeah, I'm here.
Amazing. So that area's energy, I love it.
5-1 emotional manifesting generator,
Yeah.
triple split, wide open G, all the things.
Thank you.
Huh?
Is it Nancy? And again, if you can't unmute, that's okay. I'll take that as your, oh, go ahead.
Sorry. Let me open the screen. Let me see. Okay. Can you see me? Okay, cool.
Yeah, hi.
Hi, I'm Nancy from New Zealand. 6'2" as well, so like to hide behind the screen, just feel much more comfortable. Yeah, and on the roof, what else to say? I don't know what to say. I'm just here, and I don't know why I'm here.
I
But
love
there's
it. Thank
there's
you
a reason
for,
to be here anyway.
yeah.
Mm.
Well, thanks for coming out and feel free to go off screen if that's become more comfortable for you too, but it's nice to hear your voice and see your face.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
I think we all know Jonah, but do you want to say anything about?
I just want to introduce the people who've already introduced themselves again. So I'll
Yeah.
just say Sarak is doing really incredible research on sound and music and relating music to human design and relating audio to human design and sacral sounds and all sorts of stuff. I mean, Sarak you're absolutely a deep investigator of this knowledge, even though being a second line, people think maybe second lines don't investigate. It's not true. I mean, you're like, or just, and just doing so much. Like I've seen, so actually Sarak has a room on Signpost, so make sure to check out things he's been posting, but also on Facebook. And that was my first encounter, was just, wow, here's somebody who is really deep in new and creative, like creating new things, like building new experiments, creating new ways of engaging with human design knowledge and doing things nobody else has ever done before. So really cool stuff there. Christine has been an MVP of Signpost and has been such an active member, and this has been really great getting to know her these past couple weeks, and having so many great comments. And just thank you so much, Christine, just for like being there for so much of it, and even on that YouTube live we did. And then Nancy, I only first connected with a few months ago in my class, and well, and I guess independently from that, we did that interview. But I've just had such an amazing connection to Nancy, and I now feel like I've got to visit. I've got to visit at some point. I have to travel the world at some point. There's a lot of people I want to visit around the world, but definitely want to go to New Zealand. And I know you're also out there, Sarak. But yeah, I mean, Nancy is an incredible artist, really an avant-garde artist who does very experimental work, and not at all what you might. There's nothing expected about it. There's a lot of novelty there as well. So I love meeting people who are just doing new things that have never been done before, and that's where it's really exciting and really scary, because you never know what's going to happen when you're doing something new. So I just feel really lucky to have the people on my in my fractal family that I have. And I guess we're just kind of drawn to each other because we detect something in each other of, oh, this is different than what else I've seen out there. And I don't know, I'm a big fan of the people that have joined Signpost, and even outside of that, just the people that I've connected with. And same with you, Victoria. I've been completely just impressed with not only how, I mean, at so many different levels, but just like your genuine care for people and your way of being with people, and it's like what doctors call bedside manner. You have such an incredible manner with people, and I'm just being so sincere and just so there for it. And so, yeah, it's when you said we'd only met like a year ago or something, I was like, is that true? Is that possible? I guess so. But you've come to, besides coming to HDHC, you also came, I think, for the winter event, or and then I saw you at Burning Man. And anyway, it's just been great getting to know you as well. So
thank you. Gosh, does everyone feel just so filled up by Jonah's intros of us? I'm pretty sure that I can say that we all feel very grateful to know you too.
Thank you.
Yeah. So okay. So thank you for humoring me. I just feel like it's nice to have a little connection here from everyone before we jump in. So in the description that Jonah put on Signpost, I think it said discussion group, and then there were 3 questions. The first one was, can we heal from the not self? I think the next one was like tribal nostalgia. And then the last one was projectors seeing projectors. I don't intend that we get through all of them, and I really only have prepared like just stream of consciousness, some bullet points about the healing from the not self piece, and then I can share that and we can open it up to discuss. And if we have more time, then we can go to the other topics, because I do have thoughts, just not like super prepared. Yeah. So, okay. So I was interested in talking about this question because it was something that came up at the conference, like at the outskirts of different lectures and topics. Like, I think what I see is like a small sort of like faction of people that are like, healing, like it's just its own sort of like merry-go-round that you go on, and like human design isn't about that, it's about like something else entirely. And then there's another, I don't know, my experience of healing as belonging to this broader support of the experiment in and of itself, but it gets so nuanced because we have to define what healing really means. And so I'll get into that as well. But I think a place to start is I'll start with a little more context about my healing journey, and then we'll define like what kind of healing we're talking about. So like many sixth lines, my Saturn return. So I met human design in 2017, also the year of my Saturn return, which was also the beginning of years long, I'm still sort of in it, chronic health issues. And so everything from like gut stuff to hormonal endocrine stuff. And I don't need to get into all the details of it, but essentially it led me down a pretty long healing path and journey. And I would say that a lot of the modalities for me have been absolutely essential. But there is a sequence, and I'm guessing maybe some of you have experienced parts of this or seen this with other people, where it's like at first the healing brings a lot of gains, and it's like, wow, like I'm getting so much value from it. And then it can kind of go into like the fixing healing loop, is what one of my teachers calls it, where it's like, okay, I'm getting a hit, what's the next thing? And then it can at some point cross over into, what if I leave that behind and life is just organically initiated? I see Christine nodding so hard. Life initiates me into organic healing at the perfect moments in perfect times, but it's not something that I control. And that sequence is the same thing that I see with clients that I work with, what I've experienced myself with the human design experiment in and of itself. And I don't remember if everyone said like, you know, where they're at in their process. But I just think that part is so interesting. Hi, Ashley. So that's a little bit of context. And, you know, I'll just say, while I probably haven't done all the healing things, I feel like I've definitely done a lot of them. and, you know, like that fits into that sort of map that I just laid out. So healing. The healing that I'm talking about is not the healing where it promises a protection from the ups and downs of life. This like, which is tricky because I think not just any healing modality, but even human design sometimes when we first come to it has this like false promise of, oh, it sucks to feel frustrated, it sucks to feel disappointed, but you don't have to. Maybe you don't have to be bitter if you live correctly. And this is where it gets so nuanced, right? Because like there is a way in which that there is some truth to it, but it can be covered in all of the mind's expectations of what that really means. So that is like the safety and protection from like not suffering is not the kind of healing that I'm talking about. And it can be really subconscious because I don't think anyone would like raise their hand and admit like this is what they're thinking. But a lot of times, and I only say this because I've experienced it too, or, you know, have at some point believed this myself, that somehow healing will make everything better. My back hurts, so I go to the chiropractor and then I'll feel better. And that's, again, that's not wrong, but continuing to then play it out, then there's still this subtle undercurrent of healing being driven by a fear or aversion of some kind. And this is the paradox, because sometimes that kind of healing does open up more space in the body, in the nervous system, but it doesn't come from the mind. So the healing that I'm talking about, that I believe plays a role in having a more authentic connection to our not self, not that it ever goes away, is the kind of healing that brings us back to our baseline, brings us into creates greater capacity to stay regulated in the face of change. So there is a specific kind of healing that allows us to get into a place where we can drop the ego personalities, like story about how it should be. And so this is the kind of healing that I'm talking about that I think is so interesting, especially as we move from 7-centered to 9-centered awareness. Like something that I think about a lot is like, what was passenger consciousness like with the gurus in the 7-centered era versus what does it look like now? Because what seemed cutting edge at the time, like I think we all know the trope of like the renunciate or the ascetic that's like, I'm going to give up everything and I'm going to go live in a cave for 2 years and then I come out and like I get it. And that, I don't know about you, but for me, like has been so tempting so many times. I'm like, just sell everything, I'm going to the ashram. But that's not what it's about anymore. Like I don't think that's the template to greater awareness as a 9-centered being, because it has to include healing. And when I say healing in this context, it has to include greater solar plexus awareness, to be in touch with our feelings and in the body and with the regulated nervous system. Solar plexus is the nervous system, although I have a side thought on that, which I'll come back to. Whereas in the seven-center paradigm, where, you know, human design proposes or posits that it was about figuring out material survival strategically. So for like a, I don't know, like a however many centuries ago renunciate to be like, I just have my bowl and I eat whatever people donate into the bowl. Like that was the cutting edge thing, right? There was no solar plexus as we know it now. So, and again, I don't remember if I said this, but this is all just like me and my, you know, what I've observed for myself. If parts of this don't resonate, totally fine. Like, please ignore it. I just think it's really fun to talk about this stuff. So yeah, so like, where does healing fit in our shift from 7 to 9 centered, in our human design experiment? Like, these are sort of the tracks that I'm seeing. And maybe the last thing I'll share is like, because I love analogies and examples, like, and I'll also say, like, I didn't get a ton of time with John Martin before he passed away, but I was working with him for maybe like the last 9 months before he passed this summer. And one of the things he would always say to me, and I have like unspeakable respect for him, is he would always say, you can't fix the not self. You know, and I think we all know this here on this call, like the not self is everything in white. He would also say it's everything in black, which I am pretty sure I agree with. But he would always say you can't fix it. And that was something that, like, and I'm not trying to, again, I say I have great respect for him because I'm not trying to debate him or anything like that. But what I found for myself personally is that it's not that it's true, you can't fix it, but healing supports a more spacious and regulated stepping out of the conflict that can exist in the not self. So as an example, like, most people have open egos. I think that's an easy one to pick on. Rather than, when I think about healing modalities that aren't necessarily effective, that try to fix the open ego, it's like affirmations and like reparent your inner child, and then maybe you'll feel worthy. And like, again, I did all those things too. So like, I think there is some value there at some point, potentially. But what I experience now with the open ego that feels really good is, and I say this to my clients all the time too, is like, how do you move out of the worthiness game entirely? Where like, it's not about, do you feel worthy or unworthy? Oh, you see like that you're feeling unworthy. You feel like you see that you need to prove yourself. Like, you can see all that, great. But you can see it and still feel tension in the nervous system. You can see it and still have a reaction in the body, the habitual contraction. And what's been so interesting for me is the sorts of healing and modalities that, like, I can see it, but there's no ripple of karma through the pain body. Like, what does that open up? So, and I think that's because of a lot of the work I've done to stay more in the body. So I think I'll just end there because I don't even know where I'm at speaking wise. But that's like the framing about how I've been thinking about this can you heal the not self question. Christine in the chat, it's resonating so much. Yeah, thanks. And Ashley, yeah, he was your teacher too. Yeah. Feel free to, if anyone wants to unmute and say anything. I'm curious, like, just also like, how is this landing? I mean, I know, Christine, you just shared your thoughts, but
Yeah, I'd love to add, or not add, sort of like go over some aspect of what you talked about.
yeah.
How I've also had this strong urge to go and like become a monk
Mhm.
and like just meditate and figure it all out. And when you said that that's not that, the internal world that we have, because my singing teacher says all the time that like we have a cave inside us, like, you know, your voice is a cave, it's a cave, you have a castle inside of you, your internal world is your voice. And I'm starting to get it more and more why she says that. And it's implying to me that the internal world that we have and that we can create is almost becoming known collectively, like in the collective conscious, as the same thing as the external world, half of your demons, when in reality the people that trigger you and the people that are in the world around you are you, and they're your opportunities to heal. And it's basically like the pattern and the program being efficient and being like, well, why don't both of your personality nodes heal at the same time, quote unquote heal, or confront each other at the same time, just to be more efficient about this whole process. I think that's like where our collective consciousness has come to. It's like, oh wait, actually a cave is just like half as efficient as just doing it in person. So you may as well just do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like if we're really tuned in and aware, it shouldn't matter where we are or what it looks like. And if we think it needs to look like anything, that's still a mind thinking it knows something. Yeah, but it's hard. I mean, I can say that and laugh, but like, I mean, I'm not, my mind still has ideas about how it's supposed to look. So yeah, absolutely.
Another
No,
thing,
oh yeah, you can go on. I was going to say my audio was messing up a little bit, but maybe we could even talk a little more about, it seemed like what you were saying, Srock, is that it's set up in such a way that we're no longer healing on our own going to the cave. We're healing in tandem with other people through our interaction with them, and it's more interdependent. It's like it's more efficient for two people to heal at once. It's almost like that old joke of two really nasty people marrying each other so they only ruin two lives instead of four. But you know, it's kind of but it's the other way around. It's two wounded people finding each other so they can heal instead of being with other people that they don't necessarily share that journey with. But I love that idea. I just wanted to point that out. Thank you for sharing that. Like I guess it's my fifth line. I love the idea that forced interdependence. We all want to be so independent. We're forced to work together.
Mm.
Well,
Yeah.
I think we're also still learning a way of. Oh, sorry. I'll be quick. We're still learning a way of being independent through the interdependence now. I think that's like another layer to this new sort of pattern, is like we've been so used to being tribal, and we've been so used to being in relationships, and the relationships are the whole of your life. Like if your wife is everything, your husband is everything, your children are everything, your family is everything, your community is everything, and then outside of that, you by yourself are like, we're still used to, if we're being rejected, we're shunned. Whereas now most people have to learn sales if they're an entrepreneur. Like you have to understand some level of marketing, you have to understand some level of rejection, you have to have like understand some level of being independent by yourself within a collective frame. And I think that is really new for our consciousness, and because of that whole process, it's opening up like this whole new sort of idea that we are our own individual thing, and that no one else is us, no one else will be there for us, truly in like inside us. There's only us inside us, and then everyone that's around us is transient, and there's nothing that we can really do about that. I think we're having like a massive conscious like collective realization that no one else is real in the same way that we are real to ourselves. But that's
Yeah.
still a thought.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. And I was just going to add, I think it relates to both Sirach and Jonah, what you're saying, which is like, yes, there's this interdependence. And at the same time, like, it's just you. And how do we find and this is where human design fits in, how do we find the communion when everybody is totally different and you don't need the other person or people to be like you? And all of the unsafety that brings up, which then brings us back to this healing topic, because I have to feel safe for you to maybe leave, right? If you have true sovereignty and independence, maybe, proverbial you're in a lover relationship, a business partnership, doesn't matter, friendship, like they could leave. That's a huge one for so many people, right? That goes back to like, the early childhood stuff potentially, but it's not, it's like, it's about that, but it's not about that. That's just the entry point into like the frequency and the feeling so that there can be more coherence and clarity and in the aura. Yeah. So fun. I'm curious, like, are there healing modalities? Like, what is the role that healing plays in your life now? If anyone feels like it's something they think about, or, you know, what's been helpful, what's not been, you're like, or I'm totally over it at this point. I don't know.
I
I'll
can.
jump in. Oh,
Oh,
go
yeah.
for it.
No, go, Christine. I've talked a bunch. You go, Christine.
Well, I was going to say,
Oh, wait, hang on. I think your mic, we can't hear you. I think you're just muted or something. It looks like you're muted.
You're muted. You're muted, Christine.
I'm gonna...
it's helpful. I must have hit it twice.
There we go.
Okay, so Wide Open G Center. I'm a massage therapist, esthetician. I went to medical school, studied quantum hypnosis, past life regressions, crystal healing, you name it, I've done it for other people. Um, so I find that everybody's super into a lot of these things, and a lot of them are still sick, which is interesting. Yet I am like so not into any of these things, and I'm never sick. Then maybe that's my spleen, my will, I don't know, but it's not my focus, and so I don't know. It's weird. I feel that the people who are like so focused on it are like always needing it, and the people who are not really paying attention like just don't seem to need it.
Mhm. Yeah, which fits with like the monopole just is pulling you on your path, right?
Like it works for me because people keep paying me to like rub them down and tell them it's going to be okay.
Are you pretty defined too? Besides, I mean,
I am all the things defined, but triple split, but Wide Open G Center.
mm,
So I just, like blast people when they come in and they just feel so much better. And then they leave and then they have to come back because you got to get that hit again.
mm.
Oh, so is that sort of implies to me that like open centers almost have a false like brokenness to them. Like that I think this like in
Mm.
society it
Mhm.
it might seem like there's a brokenness when in reality it's just like something that's not there then causes some level of discomfort, and that discomfort grows into disdain and many other things that cause like physical ailments that we don't know how to sort of like address yet. Whereas so yeah, like if because I have a defined head, ajna, throat, sacral, root, and spleen, and I also rarely have like any sort of things going on health wise, and I also don't really pay attention to my healing journey. Only when there was like a massive sort of thing that forced me to pay attention to my psychological healing did I pay attention to it. But then even then I noticed that it was like a loop, and I was like, oh okay, this is just going to go on forever. I can sort of just let this run. And then it's like I sort of like hopped off the train for a bit. And yeah, I also noticed people not do that. But it's interesting that you notice that it's like the open centered people. So I'm thinking like, is there a way to just sort of completely negate the healing story, not necessarily process, but the story of healing altogether, to then be able to just like allow people to be themselves more and let all the energy out?
I have a comment on that. I think just to kind of decouple a few different things. And I'm across of healing, so I have a lot to say about it. But I would just say, okay, starting with defined spleen, undefined spleen. Okay, yeah, you have defined spleen. You're not going to notice illness until it bursts forth beyond the threshold. Everything below that threshold is ignored, and that threshold is pretty high. Okay. Next, when you have a lot of definition, you actually, it's not that you don't get ill as much, it's that the illness occurs in the life force energy, the actual channels. And so the we call the channels the life force because it actually is very much about the vitality of the person. And when a generator is building and creating, they actually are engaging in their parasympathetic nervous system. They are having, vagus nerve toning, and they are having a lower heart rate and a more relaxed time. They're getting to a deeper sleep, or they have cellular repair, all those things. When a projector is being recognized, they're really coming to life. I mean, I've seen projectors who look 20 years older, and then they light up and they look 20 years younger when they're recognized and invited. And it's like, wow, over the course of 10 minutes, they've like, now they look like a young, they, I also have sort of interesting ways of seeing people where I'll sometimes get flashes of their past lives, or I'll see flashes of different expressions and so on. And so I think, you know, part of it is if you see a little mystically, you can really see the life force of the person. Now, these are separate to me from the question of healing, because ultimately, to me, healing is not a four-letter word. A lot of people really reject it in human design, and even Ra has ranted against healing in certain ways. But you know who's actually really understanding in this regard is Alokanand Diaz, and it may have been, I'm not sure exactly why, but he is not afraid of talking about the spirit. And to me, all healing is healing of the spirit. That is what the secret of healing is, healing of the spirit. And the healing of the spirit has to do with feeling lucky or unlucky, has to do with hope and despair, it has to do with ennui. It's like G-center stuff. So if anything, the defined G actually maybe has an easier time with the adversity, because deep down, they do have something in them that says, and it's not to say that the defined G won't have their own bouts of ennui and so on, but there's something deep in them that says this is the right direction. And so what I wanted to mention about healing is simply there's a great trope from the French philosopher Gilles Deleuze where he talks about a man who's lost his leg in the war, and he says this is a momentous event. And he uses this one book where it's all about this guy who basically became crippled in the war. And what Deleuze says is at that moment of this event, he essentially was challenged not only to accept the loss of his leg, but to become worthy of having lost his leg, because society denigrates the disabled, rejects them, shuns them. And that's because society is not worthy of them. They're not worthy of the spirit that has faced that sort of adversity and gone on maintaining positivity, maintaining the belief in the ultimate good of life and that the ultimate purpose of life. And so at the moment that this man became one of those rejected from society and so on, he was challenged to actually become worthy of that, becoming worthy of what has happened to you. And it's a total reversal. Instead of poor me, I lost my leg, it's, am I actually worthy to become one of those who has lost their leg? Or am I unworthy? Funny, bringing back to your ego discussion, but this is maybe a more, hopefully a healthy version of bringing in worthiness and unworthiness, because some people really are unworthy of having lost their leg, because they're just going to go through the rest of their life shaking their fist, being bitter and frustrated and disappointed and angry and all of this stuff, because they were not able to heal their spirit from its greedy expectation of having full mobility for their whole life. So it raises the question of, where do we get off having the expectation? Yeah, we had two legs and we could walk around. Now we can't walk anymore. Now we're stuck in a wheelchair. Who are we to expect that we should not be in a wheelchair our whole life? It's just a question of spirit. And the healing, his leg's never going to heal. I mean, it's gone, it's missing, but his spirit can heal from that expectation. So that's, I want to just kind of decouple healing, the two sides of healing. Like there is the physical health, sure, but there's also the spiritual health, we could call it.
Yeah, this gets into like, and I don't have an answer to this. I think it's so interesting, like how the body affects the mind and the mind affects the body, right? Because it's, I know like if I don't get good sleep for a long time, I feel like shit and my spirit feels like shit, you know, like the ego mind is nuts. But that, yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Jonah. And absolutely agree. Like there are so many facets to this, which is why it's so fun to talk about. Can you, Sirach, can you repeat your question? Like, because I was listening to Jonah and then I forgot sort of the initial.
I actually sort of forgot my question as well.
Yeah.
Well, I know right before I started talking, you were talking about basically people that have a
Yeah,
lot of
I think I
definition.
forgot. Was it about the internal world and the external world, or was it after that? Because
What you were what you were getting at almost is, if there's people who, if we can get rid of the narrative of healing entirely, and we don't necessarily need the narrative of healing, because
okay, I remember. It wasn't so much a question, more as a
Sirach, I think we lost, or I'm
Not
not.
necessarily. So you're not wrong. That is what I said. But I guess like oh, can you now? Is it
Yep.
better? Ah, yeah, cool. Yeah, I feel like not necessarily get rid of the narrative of healing completely, but more like shift it to where it's something more more objective rather than such a like so like almost like how when we say breathing, it's pretty objective that we're talking about breathing. There are like heaps of different ways of
Mm,
breathing, yes, but we're still talking about breathing. And I feel like healing is almost like one of those fundamental aspects of life that we look at, but then we've named it healing because it's been so neglected for so long. Like it's really something that we should just be doing by default as like as even from as kids. It's like learning and unlearning. It's I feel like healing is almost closer to learning than it is to anything to do with health, in my opinion. That's the
mm.
opinion I just made up. So I've had no thought about it at all. So I'm very, very open to proving wrong about that.
Mm. Yeah, that feels like I don't know if I have any thoughts on that. That feels like a really intellectual question of like, yeah, again, like how do we define these things and all that. Um, Jonah, to heal etymologically means to become whole. Yeah. Yeah. There
Mm,
was a piece, I think, initially, Sirach, I might be misremembering, but in what you were bringing up around the center definition as well. And like there was a phrase, I think you said like, oh, are the undefined centers sort of like, is there like a false brokenness that undefined centers
yeah.
feel? And my sense is, at least from my own experience, that like just given the soup that we all swim in, yes, right? Because there's like a standard, a homogenized standard soup that we all swim in that's like, you should feel worthy all the time or whatever. So yeah, I think there's like a small piece there that I just wanted to say, like that feels like it hits for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's thank you for remembering that. Because yeah, I think that is actually like the thing of what I was saying is like is there a sort of a way to look at pain or suffering in the first place, and depending on what type of pain it is, like if it's a pain from an open center, like for me I guess I could talk about the pain or the suffering of not knowing what my direction is and not knowing where I'm going to be, or and not being able to feel consistent ever. That's a especially when I see things around people being like, if you want to own a business, you have to be consistent. If you want to do this, then you have to make promises and you have to do this. And I'm like even my housemates, like who all have open centers, open will centers, they're like, no, we should make a promise. We should commit to doing this thing. And I'm just like, no, I'm not doing that. But like, even in that, no, there's so much resistance to it. I'm like, no. And they're just like, oh, no, but why? Like if you say you want to be these things, you say you want to be all these things. And like, it's gotten to a point where, like, I don't, I know it's not real for me. Like I don't really need to take it on, but it's still just I know that for me a couple of years ago would have really had a lot of
Ooh, and we lost your audio
thing.
again.
But then
Oh no, you're back in. Sorry.
like, not being able to commit to something, you know, I just feel like this, that I can't. But I feel like that's the only reason it sucks is because there's an expectation externally for it to be a thing or that I do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And this is where that is like the whole experiment, right? Is like, okay, so there's something happening. The mind sees it as wrong, right? Or like not what we want, a sense of entitlement about I should have my leg back or whatever. And then the question is, can I not believe it? Because, oh, let's see. Yeah. Yeah, sir, I think I've had a little trouble hearing your audio too. Can others hear me okay right now? I'm not sure. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
Okay. This is all being recorded, so it's okay. I'm sorry that it's a little choppy for you. I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, that just like this is the whole experiment, right? Of like this thing that we're all kind of hitting on of like, okay, so, you know, we can be living our lives and who's to say that like losing the leg is a good thing or a bad thing. And And then how do we get to the place of wholeness within to be actually okay with it? Like actually okay? I mean, it's easy for us to all sit around and be like, oh, I could like lose a limb and like, you know, I would heal or whatever, but there's a lot of layers, right? And the unique concoction recipe for like what those layers look like is those undefined centers, is the transferred mind, is like a lot of the personality, right? So there was something else that was coming up around. There's something I feel like I wanted to say about the personality, but it's slipping me. So if someone else wants to say anything, feel free to. I'll also just read through the chat real quickly.
Sorry, I'm just making a little cup of coffee, but I just wanted to say, yeah, I mean, the healing of the spirit, I mean, something, so in human design, there's not a lot of talk of spirit. There's also not a lot of talk of healing. In fact, I think these things can be rejected a lot because people are still so averse to systems that are kind of, you know, just a little like the in the new age that really are a lot of love and light and so on. The California School of Sunshine Psychology, as James Hillman called it. But at the same time, talking about healing and talking about spirit are important because healing is not just physical healing, it is healing from trauma, and it's healing from basically where we've become locked in patterns that are kind of like the not self in some sense. And or they're the things, I guess the two aspects of it would be like the not self themes that we're totally locked into, that are the habitual learned reactions and getting triggered and so on. And then also when our life force channels aren't operating correctly, like that is a big part of it. But then on the other hand, the spirit is also part of it, because I like that, you know, Alokanand Diaz, he talks a lot about the spirit. He's one of the only analysts I know who really talks about it. And he'll say, like in his talk at HDHD, he said, frustration is in the spirit, anger is in the spirit, disappointment is in the spirit. These things are all in the spirit. And that the spirit that is angry, the angry spirit and so on. I mean, these are questions of why is it angry? Well, because it's in the wrong place with the wrong people, and it has the wrong expectations. And it's like we have to like train our spirit in some sense. And that's a big part of what no choice and surrender and all the human design practice is learning, so that our spirit learns how to appreciate and how to truly um, experience what I mean. It's kind of like even just learning to recognize. We're learning to recognize when someone else has the spirit that we like. That recognition is spirit to spirit, and that itself can be healing, because so much of the wounding is because our spirit has been defeated, because it had all these expectations that were thwarted, and it had all these traumas that happened, bad relationships or loss of limbs or anything. It can be a trauma, right? Just the loss. It had libido invested, and it lost someone they loved, and it just got wounded. It got beaten up. And so many people by their 30s and 40s are just so beaten up. They're like victims of a war. Some of them literally are victims of war, but even those that aren't are kind of like casualties by that point, and their spirit is so wounded. And so I think that's where healing occurs. Is I was saying in the chat, it's like the Isis myth of she has to go pick up all the pieces of Osiris, and then picking up those pieces and putting them together to make Horus symbolically is finding all the parts of ourselves that we left in past relationships, in past dreams that never happened. We had a dream of what our life would be like. It didn't happen that way. We became so disappointed, but we've lost all of our spirit in that dream, and we have to go back and reclaim it. And the only way to really do that is by following strategy and authority, because that is what ultimately heals the spirit, because it's aligning us to the right people. And we know that the spirit is related to people and place, and that if we're where we need to be, then we're in a place that has a spirit of the place that attracts the right people for us. And if we're in the wrong place, we just look out and see strip mall hell or cubicle hell or any of these things, and it crushes the spirit. And no matter how much we're going to the gym to exercise or how good our life is, we're not yet cultivating that health of spirit. So that's what I see as healing is like, if you're in the right place, you can slowly decondition from your trigger responses from trauma and become more and more comfortable and more trusting that the people aren't going to screw you over the way you were before. And that, so like you were saying earlier, like when they leave, you're not triggered into some abandonment thing because you just are accepting of people coming and going. Like, yeah, I see it as there's different levels of healing. And so somebody who's come through extreme trauma, they just need to get to the basic level of safety and security. It's like first line stuff. Somebody who feels basic safety and security, they're going to have the next level of problems and the next level and the next level until we get to people who seemingly have it all and they're healthy and they have a lot of money and they're in a happy relationship. But then they have the ultimate problem of all, which is the spiritual problem, the problem of why am I here? You know, what is my purpose? And why do I feel this sense of ennui or despair? And the despair is ultimately because there's no nine-centered communion. There's no connection to others who share that spirit. I think a lot of it does have to do with recognition. And even though that's a projector keynote, I do think recognition is a huge part of what it is to be a nine-centered being and feeling recognized. And ultimately that is healing. Like the act of recognition itself is healing because you might be in pain, but not being able to be seen in that pain and not being understood and being kind of, oh yeah, you're just making a big deal out of nothing. That's actually a worse pain, you know?
Yeah.
So I know that that's a lot, but I would just say that to me, healing has a lot to do with what it is to be a nine-centered being and what it is to find your people and what it is to follow strategy and authority to be in the right place with the right people. All of that is wrapped together to me.
Yeah, there were like so many things that you said I want to respond to. Yeah, but and I'm like, wait, which one to start with? Well, I think one thing is, so when you say spirit, Jonah, you mean like G center based. Is that correct?
I mean that the G center, well, everyone has the spirit, but I guess the spirit
like monopole based.
kind of, yeah. I mean, this is an interesting question. So the G center is the center of spirit, but I also see spirit as a level, like, you know, that Ra used to call the solar plexus the spiritual awareness center. And so awareness of spirit to me, like, is in the sense of like someone's had their spirit crushed, or their spirit is happy, or their spirit's unhappy. I mean, and it's hard to really. To me, I guess when I say the spirit, I mean the sense of the being able to persevere and continue on in life, and what is full of expectations versus disappointment. It's really related. It's almost like what happens with the design crystal in its connection to the magnetic monopole. And I guess the magnetic monopole is the spirit in some sense, but it's more like I see the magnetic monopole almost as like the tether of the spirit to the greater totality. It gets kind of mystical, but at a basic level, what I mean is simply, you see people whose spirits crushed, it means they've lost all hope. And you see people who have a really greedy spirit, and it means they have way too high of expectations. So the tempering of the spirit is ultimately about having the healthy expectations and not going too far either direction, not having insane expectations, but also not just being totally hopeless and just feeling like nothing could ever change, nothing could ever improve, nothing could ever get better. I mean, ultimately, in base theory, we say the spirit is related to the mind. So, I mean, that's kind of funny because it's base too. It's the base of mind. One of its keynotes is spirit. So, I mean, I guess that's maybe a reason why, at a deep level, why we don't talk as much about spirit, like you were saying earlier too, about how the mind can be so rejected from human design talk. Like, oh, that's so mindy. Don't go into the mind. Don't try to understand. So, but ultimately, when I say spirit, I do mean what is related to it felt in the bioform as the G center, but it's not really. I mean, everybody has one. It's like whether it's defined or undefined. Yeah, we feel our connection to spirit here physically in the body, and so that is, yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like when someone's really touched and they like put their hand on their heart, and it's like you feel it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Got it.
And also, I think.
Go ahead.
I was going to add to Jonah's points, always a G. So if you look at the 49, gate 49, the body, love the body. So if you look at a G, it's like this. I remember Alok also mentioned, spirit is in the body, is in the form. And I think gate 49, 46, sorry, not 49, 46. 46 will be the best version to see without expectation or with expectation. But what it does mean by if you get in touch with your body, then gate 25, how can you be in your own body as an inclusion of all the form that is beyond you, but also is part of you. So gate 25, your relationship to all the forms, all the things that can be human or non-human. And then the spirit in the individual behavior, gate 10, how can that be accepted or included in the Maya, in the connection with the other? So I think it's always a play about, for me, the healing is in the somatics. And it's a long journey. It's very much a long, it's a collective shared journey, but still it comes to the body. It's still individual. It's still ultimately solved in a solitude kind of space. Spirit can be quite solitude in that sense. And then just something that everyone shared, and I love to just sort of put some points here, is that how much I felt that every modality has got its validity depending on different cycle of people are in or different stage. And I always like to say, just, when we live all the life until we die, every dish, every salt we taste, every spices we taste contribute to the genetic mutations, the cells, the whatever that is happening. Even, a child who was not born, if your woman have abortion, the imprint of the connection, that event happened, still imprinted something in your body, just as everyone taking in. So I felt ultimately it's about coming back to sort of our mind to understand what is going on in the body, and not fighting against the natural reason of the body, like the gate 15 in that case. And and also something with human design, I found that human design opens the womb, explain the womb for the healing. But human design doesn't tell people what to do with the body. So that's why the trauma works, or any kind of somatic modality, or any kind of, even like when Alok did all the Osho's retreats, it can be still valid, contributing to where his later journey, and everyone too. And some people even never come to human design. It doesn't mean they cannot be healed too. And some people can just doing the very mundane reality thing, never done any of so-called healing modality. The aging process and the cycles, different cycles they go through after Chiron, after second Saturn return, I can see still the transformation happens with aging. And the most wise person I met can be, like say for me, is the person that I met on the street can be a homeless person, but they have a complete spirit. So I guess this is something, maybe, sometimes the intellectual articulation of healing can really taking away of the simplicity of healing. Waking up, how am I breathing here? How am I still reacting? And then there is something Sarah talked about, the open and defiant center. I think one thing I wanted to bring in is, even with definition of defiant center, there is still so much to heal from. It doesn't mean defiant center is not wounded. Like for me, with a defined splenic center, 28, 38, am I not having a lot of trouble with my struggling? Yes, I am. The adrenal pressure every day, waking up, needing to be shaken off. Can that be solved through just reading the definition of 28, 38, or listening to a lecture? Or should I just do a simple dance for 5 minutes and that's gone, rather than going there? So I think that's, just like, how can we stay in the inclusion without losing the uniqueness? Yeah.
Again, so many great points. There was something like 2 points ago you said where I was like, but I can never keep track of these things. To the thing that you last said about the definition as well, I think it's so interesting to look at our definition, or as Jonah was putting it, like the life force, right? Which of our channels have Black in them? I'm all unconsciously defined, but I've got half of the channel in Black. And I know for me, like my 58 in the root, and the healing that I've had to do there to not rely on hitting the root for energy that I don't have. Like that's, you know, another example where the mind body complex, where it's like, okay, I've got an expectation, I need to have more energy so I can push on this thing in the personality to get me to, you know, an expectation of where I want to be, was something to look at, that I'm sure like everyone can find in some way in their personality. And the spirit too, you know, just to go back real quick, one thing I wanted to say is like, yes, sort of this like monopole center-based thing, we exist in the quantum. So it's like, yes, maybe like that's what's happening on the design side, but it's the mind and the personality awareness of what's happening with monopole that I feel like actually gives rise to this, like, to the actual spirit alchemy, right? Because without any sort of awareness, it's just the body doing its thing, and we're just, you know, it's like not really any different than maybe like a tree or a dog that doesn't have a neocortex that's actually aware of like, oh, like I lost a limb, but like life is still worth living, you know? So who's sneaking up in the corner there? Is it Rachel? Hi. Oh, are you saying something? I think Jonah just unmuted.
Oh no, she wasn't saying anything.
I just wanted to hear. I was hearing earlier, so I wanted to come join because you're talking about bodies and deconditioning.
She was just like listening in and just a little bit off screen.
Yeah.
But I completely agree that there is a personality side of the connection to the spirit as well. Like when we're talking about, even the way Ra describes spirit is when we have expectations in life and we have such high expectations and that the expectations aren't met, that scars our spirit. You know, that is something. It's like, what is the thing having the expectations? It seems like the mind, you know? So it is an interesting question. And I just think so much of it is like learning about our openness, where I have a defined G. So it's not that I don't get ennui. It's not that I don't have sadness about direction, feeling aimless, all those things. It's that for me, my spirit, my G center is most healthy when my life force energy is healthy. Now, because I have a sacral channel, that means I have to be building out of response and all this stuff. If I had a projected channel to the G center, I'd have to be recognized and invited. These are the things that keep my spirit healthy. For someone who has an undefined G center, they're here to learn all about, do they have healthy expectations of spirit or unhealthy expectations of spirit? Do they expect too much or expect too little? Have they raised the bar too high, or do they need to raise the bar because they've set their expectations so low in life that they're not even trying to improve their lot in life? And so really the difference between the defined and undefined G are just going to be whether they're learning and going to school in that openness, or whether they have certain obligations and requirements for how to cultivate that life force energy. The way Nancy was saying she can dance to cultivate that 2838 health, or she can do different things for that 2838. Struggle with the dog. That was when Ra talked about his son who had hanging 28 and they got a dog with hanging 38, and how his son was actually literally getting healthier playing tug of war, struggling with his pet dog. But it's like, if you have a life force energy or a hanging gate, yeah, that's, you know, you're going to exercise that channel by doing the obligations of that channel. But with an undefined center, what it's ultimately about is developing the wisdom of learning about the different kinds of spirits out there and learning to differentiate, and then also learning whether your own expectations are too high or too low, and whether you are being greedy and you have it all but you still want more. Like, I see a lot of undefined G people, like gamblers, where they just keep saying, hit me, hit me, hit me. They want more, they want more, they want more, because they're just greedily, they are the best place in all of the to live. Be like, I don't know, seems a little small, doesn't have this, doesn't have that. they'll just like find a million things wrong with it and want to keep looking. It's like, hit me, I can find something better. Or they'll have a great relationship, I can do better than them. There's a real blasé sort of rejection of what life has brought for a lot of undefined G people. For me as a defined G, I'm so opinionated. I'm like, this is the best you're going to do. This is the best you're going to get. This is the best partner. You're like I get so infuriated at people like mistreating their partners because they don't appreciate. I feel like I appreciate their partner more than they do. And it could be a guy, it could be a girl, anything. It could be. It's just not about that. It's not even. It's not like, it's more just like, wow, you really don't appreciate what this person does for you. So as a defined G, I get on my high horse about people should appreciate these things. At the same time, the opposite is true. I'm like, that person's your partner. You could do so much better than them. That person's your friend. You got to raise the bar. So I see the undefined G with like really low bar and being with really, inadequate people or people that are not good for them or not healthy for them, living in really bad places. I also see them as kind of pearls before swine, where they get all these amazing things and they don't appreciate it. And they just act entitled and privileged and just want more. So as a defined G, that's what really grinds my gears. But these are questions of spirit, and ultimately I've had to go through my own process there. For me, it's not a learning process. For me, it's a process of frustration to satisfaction, and that when I'm really living as myself, my satisfaction gives me the life force energy to maintain my sense of direction in life and to overcome adversity, to overcome loss, to overcome trauma, to overcome all of the difficulty that comes my way. Doing HDHD, there's some real people who criticize that a lot. Well, I am so glad that I get criticized as a defined G compared to the undefined G people who also work on it. Because if they get criticized, it sticks so much more, and it makes them question, maybe I shouldn't do this. Maybe I'm going the wrong direction. Maybe this is not the right thing for me. Maybe, and they go into this tailspin of questioning their direction. For me as a defined G, I have enough reserve of satisfaction because my life force energy, my G is like, it's like G center powered by satisfaction. I have this deep reserve that allows me to continue persevering against adversity far greater than the undefined G that can kind of wilt under criticism. So I see my role as a defined G. I have to keep my G center, my spirit strong through doing what satisfies me, through following my own strategy and authority and being true to myself and not agreeing to do to things that I have a no to, and not obligating myself to things, not, you know what I mean? I have to like honor myself. It's not always easy. I have undefined solar plexus. It's hard to confront that truth sometimes. Undefined ego, I can get caught up in wanting to prove and going against my sacral authority. But ultimately, when I do that, I weaken my resolve. I weaken my determination. I weaken my ability. My fire burns less brightly when I do that. And so I see my role as a defined G to continue to cultivate my life force energy to keep that fire burning, so that the undefined Gs can go around and sample everything. They can leave human design. They can leave Santa Fe. They can come back years later. I'll still be here. It's my role to keep the fire burning, right? It's very different. It's a different role. And it's their role to sample all the different fires and see which fire they want to sit around and see what spirit of people they want to sit around the fire and tell stories with. Do you have any comments there?
No, I'm trying to talking about like the main
Healing.
Okay.
Yeah, healing, but we're talking about the G center now. To the fire analogy, and I'll speak as an undefined G, I feel like the way I've always seen it is like the defined Gs are the people that are just born with a costume trunk. It's like you're born with like the fireman costume or the like whatever, like basketball player costume. And then I like come over to play with you and I like also try on the basketball player costume. I'm like, oh yeah, I like this. I'll take this with me. And so like I take costumes from people and maybe I'll reuse them, maybe I'll never use them again. But yeah, I love the image of you like keeping the fire burning. Was there something?
Well, yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, because I want you to be able to leave and come back, and like it's like the defined G doesn't just want people to sit around their fire because they are forced to. It wants them to have sampled all the fires and decided out of their own wisdom, this is the best
Well,
One.
that's what like a healthy you thinks. I will not say that that's the case for every defined G that I've met.
Okay, but I mean,
yeah,
even if
I
they do
do.
force you to do it, like ultimately they want you to come to it on their own. It's almost like they don't want you to be in a relationship with them because you were guilt tripped into being in a relationship with them. They want you to have seen all the other relationships and go, no, of all the people out there, I want this one. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Nancy, was there something? I saw you unmute for a second.
Yes, I was just adding to what Joanna was saying about defined G. And one thing from undefined G, I want to say is this attachment, addiction to suffering piece, like almost like gate 25, for undefined G is, okay, fundamentally underneath it is this feeling of insignificance. And you try to gather all the bad events, bad expectations, not the right people, extreme polarity of people, to prove that how insignificant you are. There's no deservability to exist. And because you don't exist, so that there's nothing for you to be loved. Everything was wrong with you. So there is this addiction underlaying that suffering, this just cannot get out from that with that undefined G, I guess at the beginning of most people's journey. And a lot of time you really have to try until 40, like the gate 46, the experiential journey, until the body is really broken in a certain way. And finally, a lot of time is not something other people help you to save you from suffering, or not just by a certain modality. Sometimes it's really come to the point. Maybe people think, oh, it's because this modality coming in so that I can heal. It's a lot of time I witness is you just had enough with your own suffering. One day you wake up and just, I'm enough with this. I've seen this all the time. One day you let go of the attachment to that addiction. And a lot of time, interesting things, people see it. People see it. People know it all the time. It's just until that time, people really are willing to meet that darkness. Is no one harmed you. You are the self harming yourself, the self-hatred with the gate 10. So all the scenarios undefined G, I guess, is journey between when are you going to give up your attachment to all your own shit and examine your shit and taking it out and sending to the places and finding where are the virus there and ready to do some work. When I say work, it can be the moment you realize it. All the work come to you. You don't do. It's like that you attract the thing that can support you at the moment, whether it's something to do with the body or human design, or it can be a nutrition therapy or something like that. You know, sometimes people just have some stomach bugs and causing all the other kind of issues with healing. They just need to do that. But the moment I think is the point is you realize that you are the one, you are the fool. You are the fool seeing the cloud and thinking it's going to have a hell, or it's going, the world is going to collapse. And then you realize it's fine. The world is still there. You do exist. To really, I think it's a lot of it is like for the 25 to recognize, hey, my body 46 really exists. Yeah. And then through that existence, I can have the behavior, gate 10, justifying and playing the polarity of the human Maya, gate 15, with that spectrum. And then you might still falling into it. And a lot of time we get triggered again. And a lot of time I found when you're triggered again, every time you get triggered again, once there is awareness, it's less of that attached to the pain. The pain is still the same, but somehow difference between you numb yourself from the pain versus, oh, you really meet the pain, and then the pain really dissolving somehow in a way. Maybe the pain dissolving in your own change of the colors or change of your attitude towards it. Yeah.
Nancy, I feel like there was a lot of beautiful stuff you said, but the one part that my ears really perked up to was like the power and the role of disillusionment in this process. The thing, like the role of the thing that breaks you, so that breaks the illusion of control, the illusion of self, so that, like, to go back to the sequence, life is initiating you into healing. You're not the one doing it. And I think that sort of answers Sirak's question that came through the chat. And Jonah and other people, you might have different thoughts, but I'll just read the question. So how, as an undefined G, can we discern if we're being too harsh or not harsh enough? And I'll say, so as an undefined G, you know, I read this question and I think about past versions of myself that have specifically really struggled with the undefined G. And by no means is it like I'm at this clean, neat, like tied a bow on it place, but I'll just, so as an example, right, as an undefined G, I've certainly had moments where I'm like, where should I be? Where should I be? Gotta find the place to be. And that in itself is is like the undefined G, like not self, right? But it's like, I don't know where I'm supposed to be. And I feel like I need to figure out where I'm supposed to be. And that's the only issue. And wherever I am, right, if we go back to the fundamental human design basics, the monopole is moving us through life on a line to the place time that we're dying. How could life possibly be wrong? How could where I am right now, even if I don't like it, possibly be wrong? And so even it's like we can talk about sort of the characteristics of like, oh, maybe, you know, your bar's not high enough, your bar's not low enough. But even if that's the case, it's still what's happening. And in my opinion, like that can't possibly be wrong. So there's just the observation of what's happening and then the perception that we're doing something about it, but what's really happening is we're just observing, and then the next thing in life happens. And maybe, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I call that being in the right place, but it's not correct for me.
Yeah.
That makes
Yeah, I mean, this is where like words it totally makes sense. The correct, incorrect terminology, that's its own separate debate. Here's how I see it. And actually, I like remember sitting at someone's lecture at the conference, and I just see like, I've been meaning to make a post about this, like drawing a line, like a slide where there's a line and it's like correct, incorrect, correct. Things that feel good and like, I don't know, support the highest expression of our design. And then incorrect is like things that don't feel good and like are the not self. And then you zoom out and it's like the line is inside a whole circle that is like the Maya and like all of reality, and whether it's correct or incorrect, it's still part of the totality. So anyway, that's just
well, I have one minor thing to add here. Then I also think there's so many good messages in the chat. Maybe you might want to read them, or I could read them out loud, just because some of them are just so good. But the thing that I just want to add is I do think, regardless of whether you're a projector or not, that recognition has something to do with it. And that a big part of what we're doing is learning to recognize things. And that's how we develop our wisdom, is just learning to recognize, even just being able to put a name to it, being able to identify, okay, you have undefined G center, being able to say, I'm not comfortable here. That could be a momentous occasion for somebody where their whole life they've been trying to force themselves to be comfortable with something they're not comfortable with, or trying to pretend to be comfortable, or they're feeling so much peer pressure to be comfortable, or they have undefined solar plexus and they don't want to hurt somebody's feelings, or undefined ego and they want to prove what a good kid they are, or what a good partner they are, so that they've been forcing themselves to just kind of grin and bear it, no matter how much discomfort they feel. So really just honoring the truth of whether you're comfortable or not, and whether your spirit actually does feel nourished somewhere or not, and not allowing the mind to then, because I really see the problem of the undefined G as not a problem of spirit. I'm not saying like you need to have a better spirit. I think the spirit is fine. I think it's the mind jumping in there and ignoring the spirit. The spirit could be really unhappy, and the mind is saying, no, 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 this is the right direction in life. This is your vocation. Or the spirit could be really happy and the mind is going, no, you know, we can do better. I mean, it's that thing that, you know, Alak Diaz, it took him many, many years to get here, but he has an undefined G center, and he got to the place where he really said that the ultimate wisdom he learned is, if you wake up in the morning and you feel lucky to be where you are, that's the best it gets. And so it's like the question from Sirach, how do you know when you're being too harsh or not harsh enough, is really the question of how do you know when it's the best it's going to get? Because if it's the best it's going to get and you keep looking, you're going to end up with something worse. But if it's the best it's going to get and you stop looking, you're going to have the best that you could get. And that is really the question. It's like a gambler who's like, how much money can I make? Should I keep going? Should I call it? Should I go home? It's like, go home when you're ahead, you know, call it when you're ahead. If you're in a relationship and you're 51% happy, then that's better than a lot of people in the world out there. Okay, I'll tell you. I don't have any ideas on that. Okay. But anyway, I really love these comments. I don't
Yeah, there's a lot and I haven't kept up. So are there ones you want to
well,
read?
there's just one that I wanted to read, which was from Nancy. Trauma is the spice to the dish. Healing opens the taste and smell to capture the essence of the spice. The spice could be similar, yet receptivity to it is unique. Healing journey is a kiss from the air to the inner skin. So I just wanted to share that one. Yeah.
Mhm.
But,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, this is all really good. I know we didn't get to your other topics, but I do think the projector, maybe we can talk about it next time, or maybe we'll just talk about it more on Signpost. But in projector recognition, I do kind of generalize that as something that all of us are learning to do, which is learning to recognize things. Human design teaches us to recognize things, recognize patterns, recognize the not self. Yeah, it is awareness. Like the projector is the poster child of what all nine-centered beings are being asked to do, which is to recognize, and that recognition itself does have something to do with the spirit and the healing journey.
Interesting. Yeah, what I meant by that phrasing is specifically, and I think what you just said, Jonah, fits into it too, slightly different, colored by my own experience, which is as a projector, there has been such a big unlock for me in my own experience of my design and my awareness through being seen by other projectors that I think could only have come from other projectors, like could only have come from another monopole, like plugging in and getting in there. And I used to not think that. I used to think like, hey, we're all just people and everyone's unique. And of course you can learn and get codes from anyone. But specifically for adult projectors that were not raised with the feeling in their nervous system of being recognized, right? Like when you think about like just children in general needing to be mirrored by adults to be like, oh, I can like handle what it's like to be scared. For projectors that haven't been deeply, truly seen, I think that is something that is essential for the experiment and the process. And yeah, so there's more I could say on that because obviously it's a separate topic, but that would be, I'd love to talk about that one at a future point. Yeah, thanks for the reminder on it. I feel
Victoria,
like
I also just wanted to also add on to also maybe in later sessions, if Jonah wanted to do a session for projector healing, because there's something I've been really noticed that even projectors, my projector clients with a defined G, the sense I got, the feeling I got, is very much like undefined G. So I really see the difference. Like projector is almost a separate type to look in terms of the healing from the G perspective. So I don't quite get the logic understanding of it yet. So I would love anyone to do a class on that, yeah, to help me clarify. Yeah.
all right. Well, it's noted. However, Jonah, you feel like is going to be best in Signpost. Do we feel complete on this topic? I feel like we're complete on the healing thing. We've got like 9 minutes left. It feels like we're sort of done, maybe, or maybe I am. But if I don't know if people just want to like hang out for a few more minutes. I see a really long comment. I haven't fully read it from Sirak, so maybe I'll just read it out loud. So Christine said it's harder when you're unaware of being ahead. Oh, this is back to the G center, like being, where's your bar? And it's harder when you're unaware of being ahead for that from an undefined G, Christine. Sirak, yep, 100%. For me, I find it so difficult to be in a relationship and experience any sort of dissatisfaction, especially being an only child too. Learning human design has made it a bit more confusing too, because being with someone who doesn't understand it or care to understand it or care to means that my energy often doesn't get respected. She's still amazing though, so it's hard to tell. Should I stay or should I go? Yeah, that's its own interesting topic.
Stay. Sorry.
Yeah, Jonah has thoughts.
So many people really want to get out of relationships because the other person isn't into human design. And what I would say is part of the selfishness is learning how to be in relationship with people where you yourself, like this is the enlightened selfishness, learning to be okay with having your needs met to be okay with having your needs, even if they're, to be okay with basically disapproving of them and not telling you you're disapproving of them, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, not even thinking about it. I guess it's just being more focused on yourself is something that's really scary, because we often are averse to selfishness. But I'll just say, as a defined G, I think that the self-love and the self-healing and the loving yourself, the enlightened selfishness, is the only way. And that as that happens, you don't resent them, because you're having your needs met and you're selfishly getting from that relationship what you enjoy the most. And so then your way of treating them is filled with respect and love for them and not resentment. And they will automatically act differently to you, regardless whether they're in human design or not. So there's a lot of people who talk about, finding the right people in your life and so on. I would say no. I think usually you're with that person for a reason, and you have some sort of soul bond or soul contract or something that is connecting you with them. And if there's a question, you will know when it's over. And if you don't know that it's over, the instinct is for the mind to want to get out. But then you just end up in another relationship that ends up in the exact same place a few years later. So instead of throwing away a relationship, just be more selfish. That's my advice. Be more selfish. Anyway, this is my little rant there. Sorry, I'm a defined G. I have very strong opinions.
You have an opinion. I'll just say, go ahead, Sirach.
I just wanted to ask if I could use your defined G a little bit more to get some clarification. Because a lot of what if it's to the point where I've tried, I've been pretty selfish, and I've explained and my boundaries, my boundaries around promises and commitments, and also identities, and I've done my best to confront situations and all that sort of stuff, but it doesn't get met with respect, really. It's sort of almost childlike, no, this, no, I don't want it to change, things aren't, I don't want it to change, and so it's almost a way, it feels like a waste of energy of I don't think there's any point in me pursuing this anymore. It's frustrating in the way of okay, this is making me frustrated over and over and over and over and over again. It feels it's to the point where I don't even want to pick up the phone call. They're just I'm getting a lot of just no responses to everything.
But I mean, in that case, it's just going to break up anyway. There's not going to be any choice in that. But I guess what I'm saying is, I was in a relationship with someone who wasn't in human design, who was kind of bratty about things. And I had to continually catch myself to make sure that I wasn't initiating all of these protocols. Don't do this to me. Don't say that. You need to respect me when I do this. You need to blah, blah, blah. That's all initiating, and that's all mind stuff. And basically what I experienced in that relationship was, I really enjoyed our time together. I really enjoyed things with her. And so I just selfishly enjoyed myself and allowed myself to enjoy myself without any concern for whether she would be equally, I wasn't worried if I was right for her. I was only really worried if she was right for me. And what I found was, at that point anyway, in my life, and this was a couple of years ago, we had a really great relationship and had a wonderful time together, because I just didn't get into any of that stuff. Now, at the same time, when I got a call from her, I wasn't I was ooh, I want to go out. She's beautiful, and she's a great dresser and great kisser, and she smells good. We have a great time hanging out. I was very excited to see her and really looking forward to, and I would have a date, Thursday's my date. I'm excited to see her. So I would that would actually give me energy throughout the week and allow me to persevere through harder times, because I knew Thursday I'm getting to have this time with her where, yeah, the rest of the time she might be kind of bratty and saying, well, why don't you sleep in bed with me? And why don't you do this? And you don't do that. And I just kind of did look yeah, it was a little bit or she'd be demanding, and she'd be pick me up from work tonight. And I'd be you can't just tell me what to do. You can ask me if I want to do that. Yes, I will pick you up, but not because you told me to. Okay. It's so I mean, it's kind of, as long as there's life there, no matter if they're kind of annoyed with human design or any of that, you're getting something out of it. You're enjoying it. But if you do feel like it's a drag and an obligation and you're just totally dead end, then maybe that relationship is over and it's run its course and there's nothing left. But I would just say get the rest of the juice out of it. You know, make sure. I mean, if it's still a juicy relationship, then don't worry about all the other stuff. That's the only question for me, is if it's juicy or not. But anyway, I don't want to derail too much from the last couple of minutes here. I know that we're just finishing up, Victoria. So if you have any final anything you want to talk
Yeah,
about. I love
no,
this
I,
fight. You're producing so much.
oh, thank you, Jonah. Well, no, I don't have any closing thoughts. I feel like I was just so happy to kind of organically follow where the conversation went with you all. I do have a thought, Sirach, on sort of a controversial thought if you want to hear it, but yeah, you're okay with me. Okay. And if you
100%.
need to hop off, like feel free to hop off. I'll probably just talk for like another minute. I so appreciate the question, Sirach, because it's like, you're like, I'm in this thing and like, there's this person that's different from me and maybe like they have ways of showing up or expectations of me that don't fit with like where I feel like life is drawing me now, right? And I deeply understand how great the temptation is to be like, all right, I've got human design, like strategy and authority, this new thing about the G center and like spirit and the bar, and like, what do I do about this? And then this is the paradox, like no choice, the grace of choicelessness, just like allowing life to live you and see what happens. And like, can there be like true surrender, which is not something we get to do, even though we pretend like we can, in just seeing how it unfolds and seeing how your sacral responds. I think Ashley or someone in the chat, I'm sorry, was saying the same thing. Like, what happens if you actually start to see, oh, this is just my mind wanting to do something about what's in front of me for whatever reason, whatever tension it's causing. And how can we be interdependent with, and this is what Jonah was touching on, like how can the interdependence be there where we're providing each other the lessons until it's done. But like the illusion of control is just that. So may or may not totally feel great to hear that. But that's a thought that came up.
And one more thing, Victoria, to add on that is there is another side of relationship that people use all kinds of spiritual traps, including human design, to see, oh, everything's okay, everything's wonderful, everything's fine. As far as I changed, my relationship to that person can be different. That person can stay the same. So there is also a phase of illusion, can be at the beginning too, that people can also just numbing the disillusion become another illusion. So that can be another top of layer, just to be careful of that trap too, because I also caught myself in it, in my early spiritual pursuit. Oh, I thought I'm totally fine, I'm at peace, but the world is chaos. The world is in crisis, and I can totally ignore the crisis, especially for a sixth line. Detachment, yes, but fundamentally you still have to face the fundamental root of the issue, whether sooner or later. So yeah, so I just wanted to add on that part.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And this is where like, and this will be the statement that wraps up the conversation. This is where the healing comes in, right? Because there is a difference that I'm pretty sure nobody can tell from the outside between this is uncomfortable, I want to bypass, I'm going to jump out, and this feels weird to me, I'm okay with feeling it, and I'm choosing like this isn't relevant right now, but I'm still fully in my body and safe, and I'm not trying to bypass, which is kind of I think what you're saying, right, Nancy, of like, yeah. Okay, thank you everyone. It was really nice to meet you. I'll see you all more on Signpost and look forward to the next one. All right, bye. Oh wait, Jonah, did you want to say something?
No, I just said thank you. This was really good. And I hope you can come to the winter respite December 6th, if there's any way.
We'll see if something miraculous happens. But and I will say, actually, just for everyone here, another thing Jonah proposed to me for a future call topic is leading more of like an awareness practice, not quite a meditation, but I might be doing that. So at some point you can watch out for a very different format if you're interested. All right. Have a great weekend, everyone. Bye.